That's what he's going to talk to us today. And in case you've forgotten, the title of his talk is Inclusive Democracy, Sustainable Growth and Social Justice. New Visions for Economic Development in Nepal.
Thank you, Professor Glenner. Because of you and friends in Oxford and Nepalese living in the UK, I have this opportunity to meet with you and share my humble ideas with you. I am indeed really humbled to be in this great institution which has been ranked as the best university of the world. As Professor Gellner rightly pointed out, in our days, youth, everybody used to dream of getting admitted to Oxford and getting some degree from here. So I also had some such illusions. I didn't have the opportunity to come to the real Oxford, but in our days, people used to call JNU as the Oxford of the East. So I happened to get my education there. Now I'm really happy to be in the real Oxford. Friends, this is a very fascinating and exciting time, as well as quite turbulent and perplexing time in the world history. Of course, I will be restricting myself to the development in Nepal, but naturally it will have its contextual reference to the. I'm indeed very happy to stand here in Britain of inclusive democracy and economic development. Some alarming, rather unsettling events have occurred lately, even in the most democratic countries like the UK, which recently had Brexit, and the USA, the leading proponent of democracy, they have chosen Donald Trump as their leader. Racial, cultural and ethnic intolerance are on the rise in both these democracies, supposedly the most successful democracies in the world. The case is no different in South Asia. Let's admit frankly, honestly, there is something fundamentally wrong with the way we are conducting our politics. With this in mind, in Nepal, we have launched a new discourse on alternate politics. That's why we have floated a new political party called the Naya Shakti, or the new political force in Nepal. Friends, politicians and scholars of my generation have had a rather long engagement with political debates surrounding the ideological binary of capitalism and socialism. However, in my own lifetime, I am also overseeing profound crises and contradictions within these professedly opposite political philosophies and systems like never before. Consider the crisis that representative democracies throughout the world are facing. On the one hand, you have increasing socio-economic inequalities and political crises brewing within liberal democracies. On the other hand, there are socialist systems that tend to constrict basic political rights and freedoms in the name of addressing socio-economic domain. Dissent against capitalist tendencies these days rarely get translated into socialistic alternative. Rather, it has mostly taken a more conservative turn. A general observation through conversations, interaction, news media shows that people almost everywhere, even in the US, want change. Accompanying this desire for change is a sense of fear and insecurity among communities, as well as earning for improvement in the livelihood and employment prospects. This combination of political and economic aspirations or anxieties makes the whole idea of change a very complex slogan to define. Wanting to change our political and economic system has been quite popular statement, yet also a very ambiguous and footloose one, because change can mean anything and everything to nothing at all. This is why here in Oxford, I make an appeal to you to not remain satisfied with what is safe and simple. Rather to rethink, to question ourselves, what kind of change do we want? Change from what? Change in what? Change from for whom? By whom? From whom? As a person who has been politically active for almost 4 decades, I can say that the way people perceive politics and political change has itself undergone change over the past few years. I don't know how it is in the academic world, since I have been cut off from it for several decades. But in the political world that I am engaged in, it is becoming increasingly difficult and even insufficient to address contemporary political, economic, cultural and environmental issues by resorting simply to the available conventional schools of thought of political system such as capitalism or liberalism and socialism. Recent political events in the world have only been a manifestation of this ideological and systemic crisis and the inability to successfully fill the voids through viable alternatives. Therefore, I think it has become imperative to indulge in a thought-provoking discussion about the necessity and possibility of striving for new theoretical ideas and practices that are better than what is available before us. We must dare to admit and acknowledge the flaws and limitations of both capitalism and socialism and learn from them to advance ahead to seek new alternatives that better suit the realities of our societies today. The great Albert Einstein had famously said, "No problem can ever be solved at the same level of consciousness that created it." Yes, we have to raise our consciousness to solve these problems. The search for alternative vision has, I think, already begun. I can say that it has begun at least in Nepal. I would like to believe that today, as I stand here to speak, I speak as a representative voice of all those who want genuine change and a viable alternative in Nepal. These voices are not merely impulsive, but also informed. They are infused with immense determination to translate them into reality. Let me initiate the discussion on alternative vision for Nepal's political system and economic development through my own story. Friends, as I already indicated a while ago, being a politician has never been more difficult, never been more infuriating than at this time of pronounced contradictions and perplexities. However, let me also tell you that this is also the most exciting and testing time for political leadership in a country that has recently promulgated a new constitution after decades of peaceful as well as armed struggle. I, as a 62-year-old man, after years of championing Maoist ideas, I have resolved to start anew. I hope you understand the enormity of the challenge staring in my face. But I believe and trust that immense challenges come with immense possibilities. All my life, I have believed that Marxism and all political philosophies are not dogmas, but tools or means to help us better understand the world and change it. Just as there are research methodologies for you all in the academic world to conduct your research, political theories have to be interpreted rightly and deservingly, but the true significance lies in their applicability by the practitioners. No line is carved in stone, and therefore I stand perfectly comfortable in carving out a new vision for my country, drawing from my rural and revolutionary past on the one hand, and the other my learning from current political and economic practices prevailing across the world. I all my life have been more focused on doing and not at all on dogmas. Let me also tell you that this endeavor to start anew is not a sudden, whimsical or emotional decision. In fact, my resolution to start freshly through a new political movement needs to be seen within the overall context of my political journey. There are certain stances that have remained continuous throughout my political life, and there are things that I have now found important to learn and unlearn today. Since the initial years of my student activism, I had consistently stood for a republic that's free from monarchy and autocracy. I have also consistently struggled against undemocratic tendencies within the Communist Party. And perhaps many of you already know I have had to face many charges and even punished for that. Understanding the nature of underdevelopment of Nepal has not only been my doctoral research, but making a concerted attempt to change that structure of underdevelopment and poverty has been my lifelong pursuit. For all the mistakes and shortcomings that may have occurred in the process, I must say that I have no regrets whatever in making those attempts. I am here to learn as I act and will continue to do so. One main reason why I left the Maoist Party and to start anew was the realization that a major chapter in the political history of Nepal got completed with the promulgation of the new constitution. We now have to embark upon a new era by taking positive lessons from the previous one and discarding the negative ones. Having completed one significant political course, now is the time to focus on economic development so that we have the capacity and resources to implement the political provision encoded in the Constitution. How can a state deliver its promises of making fundamental rights of education, health, shelter, employment realizable to its people if it's economically so poor? As you may know, Nepal's per capita income right now is only $700 per annum. That comes to only $2 per person per day. That means the whole country is below the poverty line. How can political parties claim to have the moral authority to carry out an economic revolution when they themselves are so corrupt and short-sighted? A new era therefore requires new political and economic visions and audacity to break away from a polluted, corrupt political culture. Since the party that I was previously committed showed no signs of breaking itself away from such corrupt and hypocritical tendencies, I decided to take a plunge myself. I left a party that I spent the prime period of my life building, leading, and setting its agenda. It played the most significant role in making Nepal a republic. Nepali people elected their representatives to Constituent Assembly for the first time in Nepal's history to have their own constitution. Through long drawn and intense round of political debates and deliberations, Nepal now is a federal, democratic, secular, inclusive republic. And yet, I also know that our achievements fell short of expectations of a large mass of our people who wanted us to be more progressive. It was very disappointing and rather embarrassing to witness the main leadership of my previous party discarding and unduly compromising on some of the most fundamental principles. I also felt the need to start anew because I felt that after the promulgation of the constitutions, there was a sense of complacency in the rank and files of not just my party, but in almost all parties. The political leaders were back to their same old business and way of life. Unless the ordinary public feels that politics is serving them, caring for them, and working for them for the betterment of their lives, hard-won political cause tends to become irrelevant for the people, especially the youths. I saw this pattern develop rampantly during the last constituency assembly elections. However, there was little realization within the old party for an honest introspection and correction. There was no willingness to bring changes in the working style of the party. There was reluctance to revisit and develop the party's political ideology to make it relevant to the needs of the 21st century. Therefore, I strongly felt that a new political outfit with a new vision and with a new team was absolute necessary. I consciously decided to avoid the conventional path of splitting an existing party and decided instead to resign from my party all state positions, and today friends from the Maoist party and a lot of new colleagues like Mr. Madan Rai is here. Please stand. He belongs to no party. He is a renowned agricultural scientist. He never joined any party. People like him and others have come together to build a Naya Shakti. Our aim is to build an alternate political party endowed with principles and goals of sovereignty, economic prosperity, accountability, transparency, sustainability, and inclusive participatory democracy. It shall not only be a political party, but will also be an alternate political path or movement that can adorn Nepali politics with honest and ideal strategies, policies, method, and culture. Dear friends, first let me speak a little about the need to reconceptualize our idea of democracy. The constitution-making process in Nepal marked a significant break with political continuity in at least three major ways. First, from monarchy to republic. Secondly, from civil conflict to peaceful politics. And thirdly, from non-inclusive state mechanism to inclusive democracy. The success of the new constitution and its ability to pave the way for a stable and peaceful Nepal in the coming days will depend on our ability to fulfill the latter objectives, that of inclusive democracy. Although the new constitution comes with some promising provisions, it is rather unfortunate to note that the outcomes of the second Constituent Assembly did not faithfully reflect the achievements of the first Constituent Assembly. Among the most notable achievements that we failed to uphold in the final constitution was the identification of the basis for federal restructuring on 5 criteria of identity and 4 criteria of capability fixed by the first Constituent Assembly. Additionally, the formation of autonomous states for nationalities with more than 1% of the total population, which would have amounted to 9 to 10 states, as agreed upon by the State Restructuration Committee of the first Constituent Assembly and the State Restructuring Committee, was discarded. Many progressive provisions aimed at equal and just treatment of women, Dalits, Muslims, which were finalized in the first Constituent Assembly, were abandoned in the second Constituent Assembly. As a consequence, today we can see right before us our own eyes that in spite of getting a new constitution which codify the concept of inclusive democracy, there are serious dissatisfactions among those who feel left out, particularly the Madhesis, the Tharus and the Adivasi Janjatis. It is in this context that I consider it important to state that inclusive democracy on its own would not yield fair and equal representation. This is because the groups included in state institutions would still be underrepresented. Therefore, it is significant to hyphenate the principle of inclusion with the provision for proportional allocation of political space. Furthermore, even a system of proportional representation would be insufficient to address the task of doing away with the unitary centralized structure of the state. Unless the histories and culture of ethno-lingual regional communities are justly recognized, devolution of power alone would not fulfill the aspiration of a large section of the people. Hence, in the Nepalese context, the agenda of federalism is intrinsically associated with the call for inclusive and proportional representative democracy. The current demand for constitutional amendment needs to be viewed in this light. The proposition of proportional, inclusive and participatory democracy in due consideration of the three clusters proposed by the Naya Shakti Party may be considered useful in this context. We have evolved this concept of three clusters, which means if we look into the composition of Nepalese society, the population distribution of three broad clustered communities can be broadly identified as those of Khas Aryas being 1/3, Madhesi Tharus as being 1/3, and the Adivasi Janjati as being the other 1/3 of our total population. Although the new constitution has resolved many issues, the basic contradictions between the distribution of rights among these three clusters have remained unresolved. The continuation of agitations and dissatisfaction in the regions where Madhesi Tharus and Adivasi Janjatis are in majority is a response to this discrepancy. It makes no sense to speak of national integrity and social cohesion by superficially assimilating 2/3 of the population under the homogenizing and monopolizing impulse of one particular cluster. Although the principle of inclusive representative democracy has now been formally recognized, unless an agreement on the arrangement and structure of federal units is reached and the criteria of inclusion is made clear, uncomplicated and proportional, implementation of our constitutional provisions will be a tough task. It is but obvious that if we are to look forward towards a better, peaceful and stable Nepal, we cannot afford to remain stuck in these political battles. Therefore, in consideration of the concrete specificities of Nepal's rainbow nation character, we need to accept not just individual rights but collective group rights as well. It is painful to see that my forewarnings as the chairman of the Constitution and Political Dialogue Committee have proved over time to be true. To make our democracy more meaningful and all-encompassing, there should be no more delays in making our state as well as our party structure more inclusive and accommodative of the concern of those who have been left out. In addition to ethno-lingual regional inclusion, a new conceptualization of democracy should be inclusive and participatory in terms of class, gender, caste, religion, as well as different age groups like the youth, with special emphasis on them. The new kinds of politics that we are seeking to practice should also be based on high grounds of morality and complete transparency. It is high time that we restructure the organizational edifice, related laws and functioning of our anti-graft body. Since the officials of existing anti-graft body are appointed by government or civil bodies, it makes no sense to expect such a body to conduct fair and impartial investigation in political and administrative organs. It is for this reason that we have strongly argued for the need to have an independent, impartial and authoritative ombudsman to ensure that corruption in the organs of the state are under direct observation and inspection of the citizens themselves. Friends, notion of inclusive democracy are also closely related to ideas of our national sovereignty. I know that many people in Nepal are genuinely concerned about our weakening sovereignty and potential danger to Nepal's territorial integrity. Apart from formulating a mature foreign policy and implementing it with dignity, honesty and consistency, I must insist that in the long term, protection of our country's sovereignty and integrity is intrinsically associated with strengthening our internal nationality. We need to recognize our diversity, embrace the rainbow character of our country, and work towards bringing about an emotional unification among all ethnicities and linguistic groups that exist in Nepal. A nation is its people. Unless the people are sovereign, it is useless to talk about national sovereignty. I know there are people and forces in Nepal that strive and ultra-nationalist tendencies and deliberately create insecurities among the people. It has become easy to conduct politics by evoking a distorted notion of nationalism where all those asserting their rights against the homogenizing and monopolizing impulse of a particular class of people are being asked to prove their loyalty to the nation. It is being deliberately and falsely spread that the dissatisfaction of the Madhisis, Tharus, Janjatis are all fabricated, that these are groups working at the behest of foreign powers that want to break Nepal. There is no doubt that our internal political contestations and unstable polity have always attracted all kinds of unwanted foreign interference. And yet, we have to understand that these interferences are not the reason behind the dissatisfaction of our people, but a consequence of that. Everyone with a minimal understanding of old affairs knows that intra-community conflicts in a country almost always attract foreign interest and even invasion. Therefore, I would like to assert that our primary challenges are internal nature. We must be strong internally in order to make external interest irrelevant. Another impediment to a better functioning of our democracy is the continued parliamentary system of government. Frequent changes and formation of weak governments has been a major cause of disenchantment for Nepali, especially the youths. I firmly believe that there are ample grounds for making reconsiderations on our form of governance and for making a constitutional amendment for directly elected executive system in order to ensure a strong and stable polity that can effectively steer fast-track development pursuits. Can we even expect the politicians who are forever busy in retaining their power thrones or dismantling those of their opponents to have long-term visions of good governance and economic development? No. It is rather unfair and unfortunate if Nepal has to endure perpetually insecure and unstable government after years of political struggles and sacrifices to get a new constitution. And Professor Geller had rightly pointed out what Aung San Suu Kyi said. I was there in that meeting. She very sarcastically said, we were 7 ex-prime ministers sitting in the same room, and where she pointed to us and told, I have never seen so many former prime ministers in one room. So this is because of the faulty governance system we have followed. For this we need a directly elected president system in Nepal. Friends, the most important component of new and alternate politics in Nepal, however, is the pursuit of the agenda of economic development prosperity and well-being of all the people. Therefore, we want to pursue good economic policies. Let me briefly highlight with what good economic policy we are talking about. But before I do so, I should caution you that these policies are not cast in stone. All policy needs to be calibrated within the particularity and context of time. No policy can unquestionably be forever good or bad. There are certain measures which are counter-cyclical in nature, and when the rough days are overcome, those measures need to be withdrawn. We have basically looked at the concept of development from three aspects. First, development of physical infrastructure and creation of material wealth. Second, environmental conservation and sustainable development grounded on the rights-based social justice. And third, development of intellectual, mental and cultural lifestyle. We believe that generation and distribution of physical and material prosperity is flawed and incomplete without taking care of mental or intellectual well-being. Similarly, lack of concern for the ecosystem, the biodiversity and the mitigation of natural resource disasters not only threaten human existence but also leads to serious loss of capital assets created during growth phase. The four major problems of our economy can be identified as absolute poverty, rampant unemployment, increasing dependency and regional imbalance. To address these problems at the earliest and most speedy manner, Nepal would need to achieve double-digit growth for at least few decades. Equal, fair and inclusive distribution of wealth is of course a major concern. However, unless we first prioritize on increasing our productivity and generation of capital, we will have nothing in our hands to distribute to the people. Therefore, on the economic policy front, our basic focus is firstly on growth. Without growth in our input and income, prosperity cannot come. That's why the Naya Shakti has worked out a plan of having double-digit growth for at least first 7 years, which will eradicate poverty, and in the next 15 years, we will raise our economy to a middle income level, and in the next 25 years, we'll reach at the highest level of development. But growth alone does not ensure all-round prosperity. Along with growth, we need to address the inequality that develops along the course of growth. Inequality has multiple dimensions. I am more concerned with inequality of opportunities and access to factors of production. Equally worrying is the inequality of returns. Much of the contemporary policy measures have a bias towards addressing inequality of returns. Measures such as subsidy, cash grant, etc. are aimed at addressing the problems of inequality of returns. They often look good, easy to implement, earns certain popularity for the politicians. In addition, along with inequality emanating from growth, forces of inequality that already exist in society, such as discrimination due to caste, social status, political connection, etc., also become active and reproduced. This further aggravates the problem of inequality. No matter how we calibrate growth and equity policies, there is always a section or a group of people or individuals in society that needs a helping hand. All children, no matter where and in what condition they are born, they are the treasure of the nation. They are therefore the responsibility of the society, not just individuals or parents. Similarly, old age people also need to be taken care by the state. These two important concerns call for a better social safety net. We believe that inclusion and affirmative actions for the historically marginalized and disadvantaged are not anathema to meritocracy, as has been wrongly propagated by those who seek to gain political mileage out of creating fear and insecurity among communities. These progressive tools must be used to share opportunities with a wide mass of population and therefore eventually create a larger competition pool to choose the merits from. The tools of inclusion do not necessarily tamper the trappings of mainstream economics by suppressing innovation and enterprise, as is sometimes genuinely feared. There is a sea of knowledge and experience in the world that would help us avoid the downside of inclusive and affirmative actions. We can learn from the lessons of other nations and choose to practice what suits our society and economy. For economic growth, our attention is on development of strategic infrastructures that are necessary to enable people to pursue productive activities. It is needed for market connectivity and more so to take advantage of the growing economies of India and China. That's why we have floated this idea of Nepal acting as a vibrant bridge between India and China. We want to extend the railway networks of China to India via Nepal. So this should improve physical connectivity and stimulate our economic growth. Attention to human capital development is the second important element. Competitive but fair access to factor of production is another important element. And growth, will need to build competitive level playing field for all. This calls for a strong yet business-friendly regulatory institutions. Strong public institutions and efficient governance are necessary preconditions for economic development and prosperity. Now friends, I would like to slightly dwell upon the question of idealism. The ideas of democracy and economic prosperity are linked with what in Nepal are now calling enhanced socialism. What do you mean by this? The basic understanding regarding capitalism and socialism, as you all know, is that capitalist system is based on open market economy, individualism, right to seamless profit, privatization, and private ownership of property. On the contrary, socialism stands for collective, public ownership, state-directed economy, profitless economy, nationalization of means of production. Based on the crisis that both these systems have faced and are facing worldwide now, we want to initiate a serious debate about the necessity and possibility of imagining and building a system that supersedes the flaws of both these systems. I don't think I need to speak much about the crisis that the capitalist countries are facing now. The search for an alternative is visible everywhere. But what is the form and content of the alternative that we can recreate in the 21st century? This is the main concern. Traditionally, socialism has been either of the utopian or Pavilion kind. Secondly, the Soviet Union inspired state socialism kind. And thirdly, what is called the Social Democrats or Euro-Communist kind. The socialism that is mostly known to us or that was passed on to us is of state socialism kind from the Soviet Union. But there are few problems associated with this practice of socialism. The first lesson that we need to learn from 20th century socialism is regarding the question of democracy. Soviet socialism could not offer alternate practice of democracy that would be superior to those of liberal democracy. In fact, some of the more rudimentary political rights and freedoms were lacking. Consequently, it lapsed into state bureaucratism and monolithic tendencies in party organizations. As Rosa Luxemburg correctly said, elimination of democracy as such was worse than the disease it is supposed to cure. And that it was a mistake to make a virtue of necessity. Secondly, Soviet socialism rather than moving towards proclaimed aim of creating a classless, private, propertyless, stateless society, instead made a contrary turn towards creating a new class of party elites, bureaucratic elites. Thirdly, the complete negation of private ownership and nationalization of all means of production could not lead to a sustained increase in production. Capital could not be reproduced. It became easy to propagate that socialism is all about distributing poverty and not wealth. On the other hand, the leftists who prioritize the question of democracy call themselves social democrats, or the Democrats who accept socialism like to call themselves democratic socialists. In the Nepalese context, both the Nepali Congress and the Unified Marxist-Leninists adhere to these different ideologies. In practice, they basically belong to this broad category. On matters of economy, they share closeness to the Soviet socialist model, but on matter of politics, they abide by parliamentarism or formal representative democracy. Not much concern has been shown towards further deepening democracy. Another problem with social democrats has been the inability to clearly demarcate the boundaries of socialism and neoliberalism. When the communist pole is powerful internationally, they portray themselves as socialists, and when the neoliberal pole is dominant, they swing towards capitalism. Based on these observations, the enhanced socialism that we are talking about should be politically and economically superior to these conventional models. The democracy that we want to practice cannot be limited to only the formal, ritualistic, representative democracy model. It needs to be inclusive and thoroughly participatory. We basically find that the methodology of dialectical and historical materialism would be the best guide to our action. Therefore, rather than reverting either statism or economism, that is either individualism or collectivism, perhaps we need an alternative theoretical and political approach that is based on the dialectical and dynamic equilibrium of the individual and the collective, of state and market, of labor and capital, where neither negates the other completely. We also do not want to hold out the promise of creating a stateless, classless, profitless society. If someday that appears possible and achievable, it shall be the task of the people of that time and generation. We do not want to promise something that we cannot fulfill. In our lifetime, we believe that we can bring prosperity to our people. Distribution of wealth, not poverty, is our promise. The political path to this enhanced socialism does not need to be gradual revolution that Bernstein talked about, or the Leninist violent revolution route. This can be achieved through radical transformation, which could be based upon three components. Firstly, progressive transformation of some of the entities of the existing system. Secondly, creation of new entities like community economy. And thirdly, the rejection of obstructive and inept entities within the old system. For this, we should be able to mobilize our strength in the streets, the masses, in the legislature, as well as through the government. These are some of our preliminary thoughts and ideas. What we really want to encourage is active participation and widespread discussion among the people from the grassroots, especially the youth, regarding our proposition on new political and economic visions. Only then will people have a sense of ownership and belief in our visions. Only then would our plans also become more refined and informed. Friends, it may indeed surprise you that an old tested politician is standing here and talking about new visions and new ways of conducting politics. I surprise myself too. I too get worried. How can I become new? How can my fellow colleagues embrace a new way of doing political and social service? How can we reach out to the new generation of youth who want something new but are perplexed by the lack of alternatives before them? Who are concerned about Nepal but are too frustrated by the monopoly of the old political class and fragile political institutions to actually jump into active politics? These are questions that I often ask myself. I have always been motivated to pursue something important, something new, and something great. My favorite motto has been, pursue something so important that even if you fail, the world will be better off with you having tried. Let me share with you that when I completed my undergrad in architecture, I was 23 years. My family members wanted me to set up my own architecture firm, but I couldn't reconcile with the idea of simply helping myself when millions of people in my country could not even feed themselves adequately. I decided to study books that would help me understand poverty and underdevelopment better and find a solution to the same. I pursued my master's and PhD with the same intent. Quite obviously and readily, I got attracted to socialist and communist ideas, principles and figures. I started organizing a place, working and studying in India. And I became deeply involved in domestic politics thereon. I was at the forefront of an armed revolution in my 40s. Today, when I stand in front of you, I cannot but remember the faces of hundreds of friends that I lost on the way. They were vigorously concerned and devoted towards our country and its people. More than perhaps you and I are today. I of course regret the death of every single Nepali during political movements or while pursuing public cause. And yet, I can never agree that sovereign people of any country do not have a legal and moral right to resist and fight an oppressive state system. State and the governments that run it are subservient to the people. They always will be. Nepali people in general have been living a tough life. People of my generation began their adulthood in a very controlled polity, when we could not even freely express our political dissent against an autocratic rule. Yet, we fought against oppressive regimes in the past. We brought some major transformative moments in history. But we also have our own share of failures and disappointments. I know many of you are not happy with the leaders of my generation. That includes me too. However, I think it makes a difference if we are willing to honestly learn from our past experiences, acknowledge our failures, and make relentless efforts towards making it easier and better for all Nepalese. Whatever our contribution and qualifications in the past, I humbly accept that my abilities and the combined abilities of our generation are no longer enough. Nepal now needs to borrow your abilities, the abilities of the younger generation. I truly believe that your abilities are superior to those of the people of my generation. It is your generation that inspires and motivates me to want to become new and envision better alternatives for our country. All our efforts are for your generation. And now you have to take the lead. I am here merely to facilitate and assist as long as I can and as long as you want. My capacity will always be committed towards creating better conditions in Nepal to facilitate our youth to live and work in their own country, especially the youth like you who are in foreign lands and do not find enough incentive and motivation to return to Nepal. When I was young, I too had a choice to just criticize the existing system and do nothing personally or collectively about changing. But I didn't take that choice. I couldn't remain a mute witness even while I was studying in India. I set out with firm conviction to fight against the ills of Nepalese society, primarily against the autocratic regimes and acute poverty and unemployment. Anyone who has done anything substantive in their lives knows that when you try to do something, you may not be right all the time. You may not even succeed all the time. And yet, we can sit idle, doing nothing, just fearing something would go wrong or that you have lost one particular battle. The same choice is with many of you in this audience, the young generation of today. I appeal to you to come forward and take a leap, small or big. Take up any task that helps your country and its people. Let's work together, making Nepal prosperous in our own way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhattrai, for a quite moving speech. We now have 45 minutes to an hour for questions, discussion.
Right.
Would you like, if you would like to sit? I'll stand so that I can see everybody when they're putting their hands up.
You can.
No, it's fine. I prefer to stand actually. So who would like to go first? Yes. But perhaps if you could introduce yourself both to Dr. Bhattrai and the audience so that people know where you're coming from.
Thank you so much. My name is Yanki Ukia and I'm a student here at Oxford University. And I'd like to first start by thanking Dr. Bhattrai for his outstanding speech. Thank you so much. We are really esteemed by your presence here this evening. So I would like to ask, me being a Nepali for the last 25 years, we've grappled with, we've been exposed to various different kinds of political ideologies. We had monarchy in the last 25 years. We've seen a spectrum of different political ideologies. However, I guess I'm not the only one who would believe that the economic and social promises that each one of these political ideologies pose forward haven't been fulfilled. So I was wondering if you would see why, in the context of Nepal, is there any specific with Nepal as a country in general, reasons why these ideologies did not work? I mean, we elected the Maoist government. We had the multi-party democracy in 1990. So that was my first question as to why it did not work.
I'll ration people to one to start with. You can come back later if you want a second one.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
We have time.
Okay, different governments and parties with different ideologies came to power in the last several decades, but nothing happened on the economic front. And why? I think my simple question is, unless you complete political revolution, you cannot embark on a path of rapid economic development. This is shown by history. What happened in Nepal was we could not complete our political revolution time and again. In 1950, we did away with the Rana autocracy, but we couldn't abolish the monarchy and feudalism. So after 10 years, king usurped power again and imposed panchayat autocracy. And we had to fight again for next 30 years. And even after that, we introduced multi-party system, but we couldn't abolish monarchy and we couldn't make our own constitution. So the Maoists had to wage arms against the monarchy. And even then, when the Maoists entered the peace process, the Nepalese state was in a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multilingual country. The state was a very unitary type of state, centralized state. So to federate this inter-state was necessary. And for this, there are another movement of the Madhesis and Janjatis. So naturally we have to go through this movement 3 or 4 times in the past several decades. So only last year, after promulgation of this constitution, we have formally completed that phase of political revolution, though with certain reservation which I mentioned. So that's why my simple answer why we couldn't embark on the path of economic development was political revolution was delayed. We have just a partial revolution, you see. You can say, sometimes I jokingly say, it's a halal revolution, you see. So we have never completed. So this is one of the reasons. Now I think this is the time, if we amend the constitution and meet the demands of the Madhesis and Janjatis and then focus with new political understanding, which Naya Shakti Nepal is trying to promote, then in next several decades, I think we should be able to have an economic development in the country.
Thank you. Yes, question.
Hi, I'm Purna Lokson. Basically, he's my ex-leader also. I'm the PhD economics student. My question is, neoliberalism is being threats to sovereignty of Nepal. How do you comment or counter these issues?
New liberalism threat to sovereignty of Nepal.
The neoliberalism is being threats to sovereignty of Nepal. How do you comment or counter this idealism?
Neoliberalism is one aspect. The sovereignty, what do you mean by sovereignty? Politically, Nepal has been an independent and sovereign country for last 200 years. When the state was modern state came into being, Nepal was the only independent country which escaped colonization by the Britishers. So even then what happened was, after the signing of the Sugauli Treaty in 1815-16, though political sovereignty and independence was guaranteed for Nepal, economically it was caught in a dominant dependent relationship with British India. And when the British left India and India became independent, then same old British Raj era legacy continued. So that way, this dominant dependent relation still remains basically with India and other countries. So it is not only the question of neoliberalism. I think it is the historical legacy of colonialism which we are not able to shatter it and make Nepal completely independent. So of course the neoliberal path itself has flaws, I agree with that. But even the other state socialism path is no better, you see. It hasn't succeeded anywhere. So state socialism we imposed in many of the countries with Soviet help, it didn't work. So now it's in a time not just to bash neoliberalism, we have to go beyond neoliberalism as well as state socialism and find a new model of democracy, people's inclusive participatory democracy suited for the country.
Probably not satisfied with that, but anyway, yes, go ahead.
I think, hi, my name is Richardson. I introduced myself in I come from Program. I would like to just add on the earlier question with the new liberalism and national sovereignty. I think one of the issues we've seen in our countries, we have so many communities that they need to be represented. There's so many segments of the population that need representation. When you fragment those people in the society, how would you make sure that they will come together for the interest of the country? So you have seen this in the Malays, people are unhappy because there's no representation of them. Then you have the Commonwealths, they are saying there's no representation for them because the new approach is pretty much fragmenting everything, trying to create something completely new. And bringing from this past experience of whatever we learn and war and everything else, moving forward with proper economic policies between the two pillars, where we have the southern border constantly demoralizing the national interest of the country in the interest of Indian interest, And being yourself a finance minister and prime minister and seeing all of this, how do you think you would sort of create a policy to tackle that, to go in the same direction as China and India and bring in economic growth and save the country as well?
I think there are two parts in your question, if I have correctly understood. Firstly, because given the tremendous diversity of Nepal, how could we prevent fragmentation? How could we accommodate all of them? So that is why we want a genuine federalism, you see. The State Restructuration Commission and the State Restructuration Committee of the Constituent Assembly had worked out a modality for federalizing the state. That was the criteria, 5 criteria of identity and 4 criteria of capability. And the communities or the ethnic groups or the nationalities which have more than 1% of population can be given or should be given a federal, autonomous federal unit for themselves. If that had been stuck, or if that had been implemented genuinely, there should have been no problem, you see. The people, some people, especially in the second Constituent Assembly, who got majority, who were against federalism, who were against all progressive changes, they just ignored the recommendation of the first Constituent Assembly, and this problem has arisen. So my first answer would be to unite all nationalities or ethnicities, all regions, Madhesi, Tharus, Adivasi Janajatis and the Khas Aryas, the three clusters which we have categorized, they should be given due share in the state system through proper federal restructuring of the state. I said that's the only solution, there is no other solution. And secondly, how to manage India and China. For this we have proposed Nepal as going beyond the old concept of in Nepal we say Dui Dhunga ko Beech ko Tarun, that the yam between two big boulders. India and China are big boulders and Nepal is in between as a yam. So we have to go beyond that. Now the things have changed in the 21st century. The India, China has become a big ocean of economic prosperity, and India is also becoming another ocean of economic prosperity. So why not Nepal develop as a bridge between these two huge big markets and develop as a vibrant bridge between the two? That will be to the advantage of Nepal. We could take advantage of big markets on both sides, and we can preserve our sovereignty as well as develop ourselves. I think that is the only way we can develop. Thank you.
I'm going to take advantage of my position as chair to jump in here. So, but isn't it the case? I mean, I want to come up with the first part of that question about the minorities and federalism. Isn't it the case that when the first Constituent Assembly collapsed while you were Prime Minister, the main reason it collapsed was the strength of the Khas Arya backlash against the federal idea? In other words, and not only that, in the 2013 elections, the reason why the Maoists did so badly was because of that same Khas Arya backlash against the idea of federalism. And therefore, aren't you in danger of underestimating the strength of the anti-federal feeling in the country?
You have a point, but what I would like to respond to is not only just a Khas Arya backlash. After the evolution of the monarchy, we championed the cause of Khas Arya sovereignty in Nepal. The monarchy interpreted the Khas Aryas as the only real Nepalese. The Nepali concept of Nepal was itself identified with the Khas Aryas. Khas Arya language was the Nepali language, it is the national language. Khas Arya culture was the national culture, and everything Khas Arya was Nepali. And the others, Janjatis and the Madhesi Tharus, were portrayed as non-Nepalese. So this has a long history of nearly 200 years. After the abolition of the monarchies, and some of the political forces who couldn't directly plead for monarchy, they raised this slogan of Khas Arya chauvinism and anti-Madhesi and anti-Janjati slogans. and Madhesi and Janjati was portrayed as anti-national, as stooges of India. So they successfully managed to divert their reactionary intent. So Maoist Madhesi and Janjatis failed to dispel this misguided concept and educate the masses properly in time. So that's why in the second assembly they were reduced to a poor third force, and again the UML and the Nepali Congress, which championed the cause of Khas-Arya chauvinism, garnered 2/3 majority. So that is partly true, but even then that doesn't mean the 2/3 of people with the Madhesi Janjatis and Tharus command can be ignored, and the 1/3 of Khas-Aryas can impose their will on the 2/3.
That's true, they shouldn't be, but the question is, how are you going to manage that 1/3 who are very powerful? How are you going to persuade them?
So what I have been providing myself, I belong to the Khas-Arya community. So all the Khas-Aryas should not be clubbed together as anti-federalists. So what happens in every revolution is a section of the ruling nationality and ruling class breaks away and sides with the progressive forces. Then only the revolution gets completed, you see. So that's why this idea of 3 clusters has been floated by the Naya Shakti party. Only the Madhesis and Janjatis won't be able to win this battle. For this, a section of the Khas-Aryas like me should join hands with the Madhesi Janjatis and the Tharus to win this battle.
Okay, well, I've got lots of questions, but I'm going to take questions. Hang on. Sorry, sit down, please. Sit down, please. I'm in charge here. No, sit down, please. I'm in charge. Behind you, sir. Thank you. I will ask you to come next. I'm going to take George Kunat first. George Kunat is a specialist on India and on Indian Naxalites and teaches Indian culture here in this university.
I'm an anthropologist and I study the Indian Maoist movement. Dr. Bhattrai, thank you so much for your very candid, open sharing. I really appreciate that. Therefore, my questions, please do not consider that overly critical. That's what I wanted to tell you. It's more of trying to understand the transformation that you are going through. That's why I'm posing these two questions, and they both are interconnected. First question is in relation to the peace process itself. That you have been very much part of the peace process, and then came and formed the political party, became part of the parliamentary process. And if you remember, the Indian Maoists at that time were very skeptical, especially Azad, who was a spokesperson of the CPI Maoists, wrote an open letter saying that there is a danger of getting into this kind of politics would mean factionalism will come, aspiration for power, therefore the revolutionary spirit will be declined. That was the kind of criticism. And if we look at the process since these many years after the peace process in 2006, and that's what exactly has happened. The divisions, factionalism, and aspiration for power, ministry, Kisarkusika, and to the extent that Naya Shakti, Nepal has formed, is also part of that process. That is one question. And connected to this is also, you spoke about personal transformation, and I believe there is a lot of space for personal transformation, and I believe that we all should change in the process. But then I'm also, how can we be skeptical about the process of change that you are talking about? That you, and the other question that I want to ask is, like all those people, with your inspiration, men and women who sacrificed their lives in the process of this war, and now when you say you are moving away from all that ideology, are you also not betraying the lives of those people who sacrificed their lives, men and women? So therefore, how does it all lead into the kind of new vision that you are speaking? Will it also not lead to, again, factionalism, careerism, power? How do we trust this new paradigm that you are proposing?
Thank you. No, I in fact appreciate your questions. But the context of India's Maoist or the what are called Naxalites, their case and the Nepal's Maoist case are slightly different. If you see historically, India's Naxalite movement and later on the Maoist movement was inspired by the great cultural revolution under Mao in China. And the Maoist, Nepali Maoist, like me and Prasanda, we are not in favor. At that time, we didn't join that movement. You see? So our history is totally different. So we espoused Maoism in the late 90s to organize the masses of the people, basically the rural peasantry, to mount an insurrection against the autocratic monarchy, to do away with feudalism and monarchy. That was our core agenda. If you see the 40-point demand, which are drafted by me and presented to the then Prime Minister Sarvar Deva in 1996, so you will see the basic crux of our demands were democratic demands, not the socialistic or communistic demands. Though it was implied, ideologically we were Maoist, but our core agenda was to complete democratic revolution in the Nepalese context. So in that's why in our party, especially you see basically Prasanda and myself, we didn't have much different on this ideological question. That's why we were together. We waged the war, we joined the peace process. I was one of the masterminds of the peace process, and Prasanda and myself, we both were together, and we made the constitution, we worked together. And but during that time we didn't split. After my contention, that phase is now over, that is completed. Peace process has been completed, the Maoist combatant army has been integrated, constitution has been promulgated, monarchy has been abolished, and a form of democratic revolution in Nepal, not the old style new democracy of China or people democracy of elsewhere, but the democracy, federal democratic, in a form of federal democratic republic, and through the Constituent Assembly by mostly dominated by the leftist and progressive forces. I think this was a peculiar form of democratic revolution in Nepal, which has been completed. This is our contention. So in the next phase, to go beyond that, to usher in a rapid development of productive forces and create a basis for socialist transformation, we need to go beyond the old binary of capitalism and socialism or the old ideological limitations and find a new political and ideological basis. That's why we have created this Naya Shakti. So it is after completion of this revolution, you see, we have not abandoned the revolution in between. So that is the difference. Whereas the Maoists in India have been fighting for socialism and communism. Because after getting the parliamentary democracy, their rebellion is against the parliamentary democratic system. So there is fundamentally difference there. And why we had to do compromise and join the peace process, there is another dimension which I think we can do later on. That is geopolitical compulsion of Nepal, which doesn't apply to India. It applies to Nepal, you see. That's why we are going to complete even this political change in one go. So this is one part. Other is whether I have betrayed or we have not betrayed. What we had promised, we have delivered, you see. If you have promised something else and then abandoned in between, it would have been betrayal. But if you go see the 40-point demands, this is exactly what we promised, we delivered, and the now remaining part is the development, economic dividend of political revolution. For that, the new political force or Naya Shakti is still striving for. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'll take your question now, but please make it a question and not a speech. Do you want to speak? Yeah, but make it a question.
One question.
के नाम के
मेरो गोविन्द साहब
गोविन्द साहब
मान्छेलाई प्रेरियन बटर अनि एउटा प्यारासिटामल चाहिएको छ जो भाषण तपाईले माओवादीमा हुँदाखेरि गर्नुहुन्थ्यो अझै पनि पाएको छैन त्यो कुरा नगरिकन तपाई छोडेर बीचमै हिँड्नु भयो त यो पार्टी पनि बीचमा छोडेर हिँड्नु होला जस्तो मलाई लाग्छ
I have one more.
if you just as an astrologer, if you just want to forecast something, I have no answer. If you are a scientist, I don't believe in astrology. Sorry.
Okay, Pawan, I think you had a question.
Hi, Dr. Bhattrai. My name is Pawan Bilal. I am third year PhD student in medical sciences in Moscow. I had several questions, but I'll stick with no, only one.
Stick to one, please.
Yeah, I agree with this gentleman and regarding the tie between Indian Maoists and Nepali Maoists. And you mentioned just about 40-point demand. And I've got this here. I've got it printed. In the first line, it says 6 years after the evolution of Panchayati Vyavastha, there hasn't been change. That's why we are going to wage a war against the country. And in the first point, it says discriminatory treaties, including 1950 India-Nepal treaty, should be abolished. And other points, I'll not go through all the 40 points.
Just stick to a question, please.
Other points are we should not recruit Gorkhas. We should not let Gorkhas to recruit. I'm surprised there are lots of Gorkha soldiers and army soldiers following your Nasakti. So those were the points you had demanded, and these points haven't been addressed during all the regime. And it has been 10 years after you came into peace process. There was 6 years after the evolution of Panchayati Vyavastha, and there has been 10 years. And now Biplab is going to wage a war. That's what he claims to do. In what way should I not follow Biplab for the way I followed you 20 years ago? So what has been changed in yourself that I should follow you now and not Biplab? Thank you.
Okay, that's a good question. Good question. About the when you put demands, I think so that I can see faces of our friends. When you put demands, there is always a core demand, and there are other subsidiary demands around it. You see, so after when you negotiate, you leave aside the subsidiary secondary demands, and you first then focus on the core demand. Once the core demand is fulfilled, then you negotiate, and then you conclude the agreement. In our case, the core demand was abolition of monarchy and creation of completion of the political revolution. Then I can remember the exact number. I think number 10 or 12. That is the core demand. Once that was possible to fulfill, because our revolution was not completely victorious, you see, because of geopolitical reason. Because of geopolitical reason, we have to enter into a compromise, and so the other demands we postponed. The core demand we fulfilled, and the Naya Shakti Nepal is fighting for other demands now, you see, in a different way. We have changed our tactics, we have changed our path, we have changed our ideology, but we are pursuing the fulfillment of other demands, especially the economic demands, and this issue of nationalism. This has been now put in the back burner for some time, because now what we realize right now is, until unless Nepal become economically strong and prosperous and escape from the clutches of dependency, you just cannot fight against neither India nor China nor intermediates. So what we are now focusing on is we first develop ourselves, be interdependent, then unite the country, whole people on the basis of federalism. Then at a certain stage, if you have to come out of the clutches of foreign domination, then we apply other strategy in the future. So we have changed our strategy and tactics, but we have not abandoned our core demands. This is one aspect I like to say. Why not join Biplab? I think Biplab, I sympathize with him. He's an honest person, but the path he's following is wrong right now. It's not possible. That time, if we had not targeted monarchy, we would also have failed. If we had raised the issue, made socialism and communism as the core demand, then whole country would have united, all the international community would have united against us, and we would have been wiped out, like the Maoist movement in Peru and other countries have been totally wiped out. So that's why we entered into compromise. We preserved the gain of the moment, and we change the track, then in the later phase we can fulfill other demand. But Biplav is just following mechanically the old path which you won't be able to complete. I am sorry, he will sooner or later will have to change his path.
But you are doing a prophecy right now for Biplav.
No, I'm not professing. No, I wish the best of luck for him. But the whole this in politics is the power balance that matter.
Let's take a question from here. Yeah.
I'm a researcher. I'm interested in your obviously you're a politician, so you look at the problems of the power from a political perspective. But I'm interested to know your take on the culture of the power and how you link culture and politics. Because I don't think that politics is just socialism versus capitalism, and social divisions are not just because of socialism or capitalism. But I mean, within Nepali culture, there are lots of embedded divisions and hierarchies. And how do you politically overcome those? Because it's, they are there, and it's not just because you create one party or another party that you immediately overcome these divisions.
Yeah, for social division, that's why we are pleading for inclusive democracy. For various ethnic groups, linguistic groups, then the women, Dalits, Muslim and other communities who have been discriminated by the whole state and still being discriminated under the new constitution. So that's why we want to deepen democracy, expand democracy, make it more inclusive and participatory. Then the women, Dalits and socially discriminated groups can have equal share of power in the state system. So we are for it. So both, of course, capitalism and socialism, in the old sense, not being able to do that. In that sense, we want through the concept of enhanced socialism, the basic content of the socialism is inclusiveness, participatory democracy, and the proportional representative democracy. With that, we can solve this problem of social divisions.
Okay, all right, very briefly.
Yeah. No, I guess I see your point, but I guess my question, my provocative question is Nepal ready for equality between everyone? I mean, if you think about religion and how religion divides people and how religion puts people in different boxes, for example, how are you going to create an inclusive democracy when socially, culturally, within the identity of the country, there are embedded divisions? That's my question. And that's the challenge, I think, for the politician.
I think inclusive and participatory democracy involves ensure the participation of all the sections of the people. About the religious identity part, I think this should be dissociated from politics. Very wrongly in different countries, religion has been dragged into politics. So that's why in Nepal we have gone for a secular state. The religion is the sphere of the individual, so it's going to be mixed up with politics and the state system. So that's why, despite a Hindu majority country, we have gone for secularism. So apart from that religious part, other issues can be tackled through inclusive and participatory democracy.
I'm Om Kerme, working as a senior scientist in the Norfolk Department of Population Health. I mean, thank you very much for putting forward the vision of your party, which you are the coordinator. My main question is in your speech, you wanted the youth or the people living abroad to come and help Nepal. I mean, in different ways. But when you see in the news media, a lot of youth, educated youth, they are trying to flee away from Nepal. They're going abroad. And what's the vision you have? Or, I mean, you have been in politics for so many years. There might be some short-term gains or the long-term plan you might want people like us to come and help Nepal and party like yours. And how are you going to facilitate those things? Is there any clear vision on, I mean, not only asking people who are abroad, but also not letting those trying to create an environment or something who are in Nepal and not letting them go out? What's the plan you have from your own, I mean, the new party, I mean, the national party?
I mean, this is a good question from the youth side. But why our youths are leaving the country is with the lack of opportunity in the country, especially employment opportunity. So, Naya Shakti party is focusing mainly on economic development within our own lifetime, not in the distant future. So, with this in mind, we have worked out a roadmap of economic development and prosperity, which we will soon make it public. Partially, it will come out. With this agenda of economic development and prosperity, which would mainly focus on economic growth and employment, and our youths who have migrated to foreign countries, we are asking them to return home, and you can make investment, start your own business, and with the government, whether we are in government or not, we will try to facilitate it, and we believe with this agenda of the party, we will gain popularity, and in the coming elections, we will be in a position to lead the country and implement our roadmap of economic development. Before that, why I am appealing to the youth is, now the time has changed. You needn't be totally disillusioned with the politics of Nepal. The political track has changed. Be optimistic, try to come back to your country, and try to be a part of this new economic revolution. That's why we are appealing, and people like you have a role to play. You could play a role before we get into power and implement our economic policy. You be a part of it. This is my first appeal, is be a part of this movement, not that you wait till we get to power and implement, make Nepal a developed country, and then come back to Nepal. We are not asking for that. Be a part of it to make this change.
Krishna.
Thank you for a very thought-provoking and lively lecture this evening. I think some of the questions I want to ask have been already addressed, so I just wanted to connect this to the British politics here we had. There was a referendum here, Brexit referendum, and one guy called Boris Johnson had some personality problem with David Cameron, and he was a Remainer, everybody thought, but he chose to lead the exit side. Was it something like that in Nepal with you, with the Prachanda? Something came very abruptly that you decided to leave Maoist. The ideology, the war, whatever you crafted so passionately and fought, and so many lives were taken. And all of a sudden, you left the party and created something else. When did the idea of Naya Shakti occur in your mind? And couldn't you basically inbuilt this from the beginning so that when you finish one stage, the another stage will begin, and the same force could be utilized? What is it there?
Okay, interesting question, but I think it doesn't apply. Boris Johnson, David Cameron, and Baburam Bhattrai, this similarity, I think is not very fair. In our case, there is no personality clash. Between Prachanda and Baburam, they are very good combination. They work together for last 30 years. What now is, what Baburam thinks is, now the one phase of political revolution is over. Now to embark on another phase, the old ideology and old form of organization won't work. To bring out rapid economic development with your Maoist ideology, either you should go for directly towards socialism. Maoism means is the dictatorship under the condition of a dictatorship under the leadership of the proletariat. That is the essence of Maoism. But in the context of Nepal, are you in a position to impose dictatorship of a particular class at the moment? If you do that, you will have to nationalize everything. You will have to ban foreign investment. And if you do it, I think nobody will come and invest in Nepal, and we will be able to embark on a rapid economic path. So for this, we will have to change our ideology. This is the basic reason why I stayed with Prachanda till the constitutional promulgation. Just remember that. If I left without promulgating the constitution, then I would have betrayed, because that political slogan was mine. So I remained in that party till the making of the constitution. Once that was completed, and then I left and embarked on the new path. So this is the basic difference, not an individuality class with Prachanda.
Pandita.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Pandita. I just had one question. It seemed like when you were talking, you were equating the peace process with the promulgation of the new constitution. And two issues in particular that I was struck that you did not mention is around the reintegration of the ex-combatants, and the second one around transitional justice. Are you happy with what has happened on those two fronts, or is there any space in your party to continue addressing these? I think what is still remaining of the peace process.
The peace process part is to be completed. The one part was integration of the Maoist combatants, which has been basically completed, though not to as was desired. Was even then that part is completed. The another part is of this TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, is yet to complete its job. Till then, some of the old scars of People's War era still remain, and the status of those who had disappeared is not known as yet. So that part is yet to be completed. So once the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Disappearance Commission completes its work, that second part of peace process also will be completed. So the first part was the political part, making of the new constitution, that has been completed. Second part was the integration of the Maoist army, that has been completed. The third part of the disappearances and the old scars of PW are yet to be healed, which will be completed after the work of TRC and Disappearance Commission is completed.
Okay. Yes, you've been waiting. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for a very enchanting, I would say, talk. I'm Pujan Shrestha. I just completed a master's from Oxford and in international health. And my question is to do more with the economic development part and the agenda for your party. When you say that, so I was caught up in one of the lines you mentioned that in 15 years we would be dragged up to a middle income level. So these are things that when your party came to power, these were the rhetorics that in 10 years time we would be somewhere else, somewhere like Singapore, Tasmania. It's middle income is fine, but is it actually practical when millions of people every year, and it's not just intellects, it's not us who are going outside, coming back, we will contribute, but millions of people in terms of manpower are going out of the country. And that seems to be a good choice for them. I think that's contributing to 1/3 of their whole economy. Do you think in 15 years' time it is practical to assume, even if your party comes into power, that we'll turn into a middle income country? Are we being too optimistic? And if you have plans regarding that, I would be really, and everyone would be really keen if you would be able to elaborate a bit more.
We need certain preconditions. First precondition is Nepal should have a political stability. Changing of a government every 6 months, even in the next 50 years, we will be nowhere. But first thing is we need political stability. That means we'll go for a directly elected executive system, and then we'll have political stability for 15 years. This is first assumption. And the second assumption is right political party with a correct vision will be in power. So if these two preconditions are fulfilled, then it is possible to turn Nepal into a middle income country in the next 15 years. Because I myself, being a student of political economy, and we have a team of economic advisors, we have worked out a plan. According to that, I think you should know more. For that, we need to have a double-digit growth. Nepal's economy has never had a growth rate of more than 5% in its history. So we need more than 10%, 15%, 20% growth rate, and for that we'll have to invest our 35 to 40% of our GDP in development program, which is possible because firstly the remittance part in the internal revenue we generate partially, and partially we'll have to invite foreign direct investment, which is available. You see, China has surplus capital and India also has, and if we have a good relation with both these neighbors and create a conducive environment for investment, I think there is likely a lot of foreign investment as well. If that happens, it is very likely we can have double-digit growth for the next 15 years. If we have double-digit growth for next 10 years, then middle income means 4,000 per capita income. We have now $700, so we'll have to increase by 6 times, which is not impossible. You see, countries have done. China has done, and Korea has done, Malaysia has done. Why not Nepal?
That's definitely possible, but you have to have your assumptions right. These are really huge assumptions. We're making, like for the last 25 years, we've had on average one prime minister per year, and how can you just say that that's not going to happen?
No, that's why you and me have to work hard. You see, you have to prevail upon it.
Yeah.
You just sit down, ideas don't happen.
Assumptions clear regarding these things.
Yeah, in politics, you have to implement.
Document we can see, I don't mind. We have document.
Okay.
My name is Zhang Yongning. I'm from Mars, China, and I'm a filmmaker. Anyway, thank you very much for your wonderful talk. And I just want one question, a very simple question. What is your interpretation? Because you mentioned so many times Maoism. So what's your interpretation of Maoism? We would very much like to know that. And two, is according to this gentleman's question, I think if China can achieve what it achieved in the past 30 years with kind of a right economic policy, Nepal will definitely go and achieve that, because given the size, given the diversity culture of Nepal, what I saw, I've been there 3 times, with the right economic policy, I'm 100% sure that you will achieve a middle-income country in short time. So just interpretation of Mao, what is Maoism? The Maoism took us through such a bad time under his leadership. After he's gone, when China was opened it up. So what is the Maoism?
There are various aspects of Maoism. So you should apply which suits to your situation. So Marx has said, philosophers and thinkers say so many things, you see. But you have to pick up which applies to you, which suits you, you see. For us, what suited us was, Mao led a peasant revolution against the Japanese invaders and Chiang Kai-shek in China in the 40s. You see? So in Nepal also we have to wage a war against monarchy, we have to unite the peasantry, and that Mao's tactics of protracted people's war was suited for Nepal. Being a mountainous country with a peasant country, Mao's tactics of waging people's war was useful for us. That part of Maoism we applied in Nepal. The other part of Maoism, like the culture revolution, may not suit for now. That's why we have abandoned it now. You abandoned in China, we have also abandoned that part of Maoism. But the earlier part of Maoism, you applied in China in the 40s, we applied in the 90s. So you don't have, you can't apply everything. You have to choose what suits you.
Question in the back, yes.
My name is Richardson again. Thank you, Dr. Bhattrai, for coming to the UK and give us a wide view of politics in Nepal and even elsewhere in the world. I have no doubt the reason of inequality of people in the country and reason of poor, undeveloped. And set a path and follow it on student organization, party, and even bring a movement with arms and promulgate our constitution on his own leadership. I have no doubt he will be success. But I have worried about in Nepal, many people, they are illiterate. They don't understand the things which is truth. And you are saying, we will be saying the things and we will be doing the same thing. And what the world is bringing now, like Donald Trump says so many propaganda to win the election, and as soon as he won, he make a U-turn. And he started to accept all the Obama's agenda. To get the peoples behind you, is it the right thing just to say to those people who don't understand?
Okay, I think the question is clear.
Yeah, it's clear. So I think let's not compare every individual, every leader has their own style and their own thinking and their own mission. So Baburam Bhattrai, I think you shouldn't compare with anybody. Such great personality. I am not that big personality. I am a humble person of a humble origin. So in my whole life, I have devoted, I have worked honestly, and whatever I have said, I have tried to do it. First, my mission was to abolish monarchy, complete the democratic revolution. For first 40 years of my life, I devoted for it and I achieved that goal. And next goal I have set for myself is to make Nepal prosperous. That means at least take to a middle level income within the next 15 years. That is achievable goal, and I am striving for that. So you just wait and see. And given my past history, Baburam Bhattrai has never betrayed anybody, and he won't betray.
Okay, last question. Yeah.
My name is Leonard Nana. I'm from basically far western of Nepal, which is Assam district. I've been living in this for the last 18 years. I would like to apologize if I have repeated this question because I just come late. My question is, just when you said, first of all, like I'm a very humble person. I do appreciate the media history, but I'm just surprised why humble person has taken arms. That was my surprise when I had accepted you throughout my career. Now,
is that the question?
In simple words, my question is coming now. In simple words, if this party is going to fail in future, will Baburam Bhattrai, who has dismantled the arms, to join again and get arms back in his hand?
I didn't get this.
Will you take up arms again?
If the party fails subsequently, will Baburam Bhattrai take the arms again, which has been done for the last 9 years?
No, it depends on the mission. So that time I had to wage arms to fight against the monarchy. King had the monopoly over the army. So he. I understand you. I understand you. That time mission was to abolish monarchy, to snatch his arms and hand over to the people. Or this time my mission is to bring about economic development. You don't bring about economic development through armed struggle. Where in history, country had developed through armed struggle. So there is no question of my resorting to armed struggle. It depends on the agenda. Now my new agenda is economic prosperity. For that I have to mobilize the masses of the people, unite the country, and then take them into a mission of economic development. So there is no need. There is no need of raising arms. That will be foolish, utter foolish and unnecessary.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm sorry to have to draw. I can see that there are many questions people still have, and we could, I'm sure, stay here all evening. But we've worked Dr. Bhattrai very hard. Now, before I thank him, those of you who said that you're coming to the restaurant address